Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I'm your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 137, recording on Tuesday, December 23rd. Merry Christmas to you all, and we are back here at the TCO Performance Center with some unfortunate Vikings news in a season full of a lot of it. Going to take a bunch of you guys' questions today, ask for those on Twitter, where you can follow me at Alec_Lewis. This show, which we do 2 times a week, every week, in season and out of season, is presented by First Resource Bank. It is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by a bunch of guys who are probably not too ecstatic about the news. And Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson, really good people, care about the community. You can check everything you need to know about First Resource Bank in the description below. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It's easy. It helps us out. And then if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, you can rate and review and follow and that stuff we appreciate as well. The news, J.J. McCarthy, the Vikings quarterback, 22-year-old, drafted number 10 in the 2024 draft. He's hurt again. You guys know this. If you're listening to the show, if you're watching it, you have paid very close attention to this team and to this season, I am sure. And this news probably doesn't make you feel the warm and fuzzies inside. That's for sure. JJ will miss Thursday's game on Christmas afternoon against the Detroit Lions. There were some Lions people that I may or may not have communicated with who were curious to see if he was going to play again and what that might look like. But nevertheless, J.J. McCarthy will not play Thursday. Max Brosmer will start the game, and it will be his second NFL start, his third time really getting meaningful work. So J.J. McCarthy, it's according to Kevin O'Connell, described it as a very, very small hairline fracture, and the recovery, according to Kevin O'Connell, will be similar to like the recovery of a bone bruise. J.J. McCarthy, as far as whether he will be able to play in Week 18, Kevin O'Connell also said it's a grip strength kind of situation. How much, I guess, range of movement and grip strength ability will J.J. McCarthy have into next week? And, if he can return for Week 18 against the Green Bay Packers, I would not be surprised to see him out there if the hand can recover, just because of the importance of the data points that these last 2 games were going to be. I mean, J.J. McCarthy played really well against the Commanders. He played really well against the Dallas Cowboys. He looked solid in the first half against the Giants. And that was a 2.5 game sample size, which is something, but it's not enough probably to just stamp and Sharpie establish with full clarity that he is unquestionably for 2026 going to be the starter from the outset without any type of real insurance or competition. And so there's no question it's massive. It's kind of interesting, or at least I thought it was interesting, both in the aftermath of Sunday's game and today when Kevin O'Connell relayed the news about this injury. I thought it was interesting that in both instances, they've had a hard time pinning down when the injury actually happened and why there might have been a delay from the time it happened to feeling it after the fumble that was obviously returned by Tyler Nubin for a touchdown late in the first half of Sunday's game. I mean, you go back through the film, and there was a play with 2 minutes and 57 seconds left in the first half where J.J. McCarthy, it was eventually called a holding on Justin School, but J.J. McCarthy kind of drifts to the right, a little bit out of the pocket, tries to throw the football on the run, and his hand hits the helmet of Giants defensive tackle Roy Robertson Harris. And so if you really parse through the film, it's like that was a pretty clear, real smacking of the helmet with his right hand. The interesting thing is the next play is a passing play, or was a passing play, where J.J. McCarthy dumps off a screen to Aaron Jones. Then the play after that, J.J. McCarthy scrambles out of the pocket and dives in the end zone. Takes a pretty gnarly hit from safety Javon Holland in the end zone. And then after scoring the touchdown, he spins the ball, he celebrates, does the gritty celebration that he's been doing of late, and then he high-fives a bunch of teammates. And then Kevin O'Connell said, I might have even given him a high five on the sideline. And so, J.J. McCarthy didn't mention anything then. And then the Giants got the ball. The Vikings were able to force the Giants to punt to get the ball back. The first play of the J.J. McCarthy's last drive playing of the game was a shotgun snap handoff to Aaron Jones with both hands. Like you don't see that he's only using his left hand. And then the fumble play, J.J. McCarthy has the ball. Abdul Carter's kind of in his line of sight on this screen. Kevin O'Connell made pretty clear today, like if I'd have known that his hand was hurt, we wouldn't have called a screen in that situation, but they didn't know at the time. So J.J. McCarthy fumbles the football. He lays on the ground a little bit. Then he comes to the sidelines. And the way that Kevin O'Connell talked about it, like that was the first time anybody knew of any pain. You would imagine that from there, J.J. McCarthy relays it to Kevin / the trainers, and that's when the camera caught the trainer, Connor Wicker, the associate head athletic trainer, checking J.J.'s hand. The reaction has been documented in terms of how J.J. responded, and then he goes into the locker room. After the game, Kevin O'Connell said that J.J. McCarthy underwent x-rays that were negative. Kevin O'Connell said on Tuesday that there was an MRI that initially didn't show anything, and then further imaging did show the very, very small hairline fracture, which was how Kevin O'Connell described it. So, I mean, I go through all of that because it's interesting in the context of, I mean, really, you think about all of the injuries that J.J. McCarthy has had, both this season and last season's torn meniscus. Like the torn meniscus, J.J. McCarthy played in the preseason game against the Raiders, and then the day after at the Vikings facility, Kevin O'Connell relays the news that J.J. had come in and mentioned soreness. And then earlier in the season, J.J. McCarthy finished the game against the Falcons, and the next day Kevin O'Connell explained that J.J. McCarthy reported the ankle pain. And then the concussion the following day against the Packers, the following day Kevin O'Connell came to the podium and he said that J.J. McCarthy reported some symptoms on the plane. So whether it's the competitor in J.J. McCarthy that's wanted to push through these injuries, whether it's him not wanting to miss time because it happened last year and that was a very tough go for him, not being the guy and not being out on the field. Like, it's hard to really parse through, but it is tough. Obviously, like as a play caller, I mean, there's no question when you're trying to call certain plays and you're not aware that, the player may be affected by something physically that wouldn't allow them to execute the play. So it's just been like the fact that all of the injuries, you can kind of like, there's not this clear line of, demarcation of player limps off the field and doesn't like it's interesting in that regard. There's no question about it. I mean, as far as week 18, I mean, Kevin O'Connell didn't speculate. I don't want to speculate at all. Kevin O'Connell described it very, very, very small hairline fracture. If that's the case, if it is a hairline fracture, I mean, a return in a week's time feels, lofty. But if the recovery is similar to a bone bruise, I mean, guys can sometimes push through. The fact is the throwing hand definitely affects things. And if that's it for J.J. McCarthy in this season, I mean, he played 8.5 games, essentially less than half the season. The numbers, 57% completion percentage. That's 33rd among 33 qualified quarterbacks on True Media. 1,450 yards, 11 touchdowns, 12 picks. He was first out of 45 quarterbacks in PFF's big-time throw rate, and then he was 41st of 45 in the turnover-worthy play rate. So, I mean, within those numbers is a lot of the story of what this year has been for J.J. McCarthy. There are some really high highs in terms of throws. There's a lot of low lows from a negative turnover perspective. The accuracy was a question mark with the completion percentage. there's a lot of dynamics at play beyond just J.J. McCarthy's performance. I mean, yes, the drops have existed. Yes, the offensive line has had at least 17 different combinations. It's you need a space to go about 3,000 words in print, which I will do here soon enough at The Athletic where I do my day job, to really get at what this has been and what it was and what it will be moving forward. But, again, kind of like I said at the top, if that's it for J.J. McCarthy in his second season, you now enter a third year where you've seen 9 games essentially. You've seen a lot of up and down play. You saw it trending the right way against defenses that I'd be remiss if I didn't say have been some of the worst in the NFL. You've seen some highs, you've seen some lows, and it puts you in a really, complex position in many respects. On one hand, a quarterback of his experience level needs time and needs development. And the best way to, improve and grow is the experience of NFL games. And so there's that, but then you're balancing that with a team that hasn't won a playoff game in 6 years, a regime that hasn't won a playoff game since they've been here, a superstar wide receiver who doesn't want to experience what this season was ever again because of the standard that he has for himself and the teams that he's a part of. So how do you bridge those two worlds? From an offseason plan perspective, where you're going to have to worry about cuts from a veteran roster, coaching staff turnover. It is a complex, not ideal position to be in when you're playing in a division with a team in the Chicago Bears that is young and improving, obviously, under a very capable and good head coach. You have a team in the Green Bay Packers with a good quarterback and a young, developing roster, even if they lose their defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, to become the head coach. And then a Lions organization that has a ton of young players extended into the future, and they have questions themselves, but you break it down like that. You have the amount of internal questions you have the situation you're in the division, the quarterback conversation, staff turnover, roster decisions, and you guys listening to me can probably understand why these podcasts over the next few months that we're going to do are important, are meaningful, and will continue, because there is a lot to sort through, and there will be a lot to continue to sort through. And so I'm going to get to the questions here, but that's just where we're at from a J.J. McCarthy perspective, and we'll kind of see how things progress from here. All right, to the questions, and we will start with a user, Ryan. Ryan, whose handle is at DOHYO Dust. Ryan Kelly, concussion and the ethics behind the team playing him, regardless of following the NFL protocol. So first of all, just going to give you my perspective of sitting up in the press box in MetLife Stadium, watching Ryan Kelly laying on the ground, and the trainers out there to check on him, and Kevin O'Connell out to check on him. It's a miserable feeling as someone who, these guys are human. The extent of what concussions can mean for guys in the present and the future, and what it means for their families and all of that. So as I'm sitting up there and watching that situation play out, there is a pit in my stomach. I love covering this league. I love ball. I love watching film. I love learning about it and all of that. But the downsides and the physical toll that these guys go through, specifically with the head injury stuff, it makes you sick, frankly, to observe it. Kevin O'Connell, after the game Sunday night, in some way kind of insinuated there were some shenanigans with the play. You go back and watch the play, and it was just a run block where Ryan Kelly's his helmet with the Guardian cap on top of it makes a real harsh collision on a defender. And when that happens, and you've had the concussion history that he's had, that's probably, that's what's good. There's a likelihood that it happens. I'll also say I went back and rewatched the film of the entire game. And I should have probably written down the specific snap and time of game, but there was an early game run block where Ryan Kelly's helmet collides with the helmet of a defender, and his head just snaps back really quickly. And I mean, in my head, I'm thinking, like, who knows if that had any effect as well. And then if you're compounding that with the hit that obviously placed him on the ground and had the trainers come out to check on him. But, I mean, as far as the ethics of it and the Vikings, I mean, look, I can tell you this. When the second concussion this season happened, and he's had 3 this season now and has 6 documented in his career, and, like, you'd be naive to think that there have not been others that have gone undocumented in his time in the NFL and even go back to college at Alabama. And that's just football. That's what it is. You talk to anybody who plays and like you'll get I may have had one here. I didn't really know. It wasn't official. So I know after the second one that the Vikings and Ryan Kelly, both wanted to take a lot of time and be very intentional, empathetic, specific, detailed in ensuring what that evaluation looked like after the second one. And again, that was both from the team's perspective and that was from Ryan Kelly's perspective. And the Vikings also wanted to take extra time with that to be, 150% sure that he was over the second concussion. Now, if you guys are listening to this, like, they shouldn't have him put back on the field. I mean, the Ryan Kelly definitely, like, he loves the game. He wanted to play. And so you battle this, like, you're trying to do right by the player, is doing right by them, letting to do the thing they love when they finally recover, or is it, keeping them out? You're riding a really fine line, kind of with that situation. And the Vikings, again, tried to be extra precautionary in terms of how long, they wanted to go without Ryan Kelly returning. But I say all of that, and the clear and obvious and factual aspect of it is there was an incredibly high likelihood that in Ryan Kelly returning, even wearing the guarding cap, the probability that he suffered another concussion was astronomical. And so, it's hard to square all of it. And so that's why I understand the question. And what I would say, just to end it, is like, I hope more than anything that Ryan Kelly, is okay in the short term and the long term, and you feel for him, you feel for the family, you feel for, a lot of people. But it's also like I'm not going to overlook / wash away the harsh, cold reality of the costs of playing this sport that we all root for and love and that I get paid to write about. Like, there are serious physical downsides to this game that is the entertainment for a lot of us. And it's every one of these with Ryan Kelly has been kind of a harsh reminder of that. Next question comes from Cade Delisle. Cade asks, young guys that could step up. And I'm assuming that Cade is referring to like the future. And it's an interesting question because I've said both in print and in writing, and I've said it on the podcast, like part of the, the complication and the fascinating layer of where this Vikings organization is the lack of budding young talent on the roster at key positions. And so I wrote down a couple names. I mean, Jay Ward at safety, I felt like he filled in last week for Josh Metellus, who underwent season-ending shoulder surgery. I thought Jay Ward moved around really well. He's a pretty versatile player. He seems to definitely want it and be after it this year. And so, there's no doubt that Jay Ward next year could see more playing time. Now, the issue with it is you'd probably only be benefiting from 1 year because he only has 1 year remaining on his rookie season. So what did you really generate from a third-round pick who might be coming on now? I mean, Ty Felton is a guy who I've talked about on this podcast. There's definitely optimism about his speed and explosiveness down the field. For him, it's just going to be about proving, from a catch perspective, from a route running perspective, that he can be consistent. But if Jalen Naylor gets paid like it seems like he's going to by another team in free agency, would definitely present the opportunity for Ty Felton next season. Max Brosmer, I'm interested to see on Thursday. I thought it was interesting that he talked Tuesday about kind of taking that first start in Seattle to the next opportunity in New York on Sunday, and how he kind of, there was a learning curve from a speed of game and feeling a little like he was playing too fast against Seattle and kind of telling himself to slow down against New York. And he's a guy whose cognitive ability is pretty elite. And I don't say that from a anecdotal perspective. I say that with it's a data-backed observation that Max Brosmer cognitively has some special stuff to him. And so, for him, whereas some quarterbacks like Jackson Dart on Sunday, for example, you got to get them to see it quicker. For Max Brosmer, I think so often, his perception ability, you kind of got to, dial him in a little bit. It's why if you go back to his college career and his transition to Minnesota, Max Brosmer in that first week against North Carolina in that college season was pretty brutal. And then it took him some time to kind of acclimate to game speed. Now, I'm not saying, Max is going to go on and be this or that, but I do think he is better than what the Seattle game was. And I'll be curious to see what it looks like against Detroit on Thursday. A couple other guys. Jalen Redmond is obviously still, he doesn't need to step up anymore. He's already stepped up and been the best defensive lineman on the team. Levi Drake Rodriguez, I feel like, has definitely grown and progressed, so he'd be a guy. But, the cupboard from that standpoint, it's pretty, it's pretty tough. Running back, there's not really a guy coming down the pipe. Tight end, there's not really a guy coming down the pipe. Offensive line, Michael Juergens, great dude, but from a production standpoint, it's lacked a little bit. Maybe like a Joe Huber, Walter Rouse, hasn't gotten much opportunity. I don't expect him to unless there's an injury situation. Cornerback, Dwight McGlothern is flash in training camp, but has never really gotten the opportunity. Linebacker, it feels like Ivan Pace is kind of, both because Eric Wilson has come on and because Ivan Pace has kind of fallen out of favor. That's one that's kind of left off. And then Dallas Turner, has definitely shown flashes, but the down-to-down consistency, I've been very forward in saying that I feel like when you watch the film of Dallas Turner down-to-down, I just still think there's a lot to be desired there. And that's just the clearest way, for me to be able to describe it. So hopefully those names give you a little bit of perspective, Cade. Next one comes from Chase. Chase Allen asks, Happy Holidays, Alec. What's your favorite Christmas movie? I'll say happy holidays to you guys for listening. You guys listening. Appreciate all of you guys for being here throughout this hectic, frenetic, quite insane season. I do really appreciate all of the support from you guys, both via the comment section at The Athletic, on YouTube comments, even those who think I have a permanent sinus infection, which I actually maybe do, jokingly. Please don't take that serious. I appreciate all of you, so happy holidays for sure. My favorite Christmas movie, it really depends if you consider Die Hard a Christmas movie. I love Die Hard. I love that movie. I will probably be scrolling on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, scrolling the guide, see Die Hard, and it will just hook me for 2 hours, and I will enjoy every second of Hans Gruber on the television. If that doesn't qualify for you guys, I'm a sucker for Elf. Will Ferrell, I don't need to say much. The guy's comical. So that's where I'd go. Next question comes from BP Bokoff. Will the Vikings re-sign C.J. Ham, and will we ever see another fullback in a Kevin O'Connell offense? I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings re-sign C.J. Ham. my opinion, they should. He impacts the game on special teams. He's very reliable. He's a rock solid guy in the locker room. And then I feel like this season, he's great in pass protection on third down when you really need the back to be reliable in pass protection. And then B, when they've gone with heavier personnel, whether it's 21P or 22P, and you've got a bunch of, guys in the backfield and you've got tight ends on the field, I feel like C.J. Ham has been really rock solid of late, and he's battled injuries. I believe he broke his hand and then came back and has been reliable since that. And so, he's the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, and I know this is a production thing, but I feel like the Vikings using heavy personnel should be a theme. I'm not sure how much Kevin O'Connell is utilizing it right now because he has to versus because he really wants to, but I don't see why you would, go away from that, especially as defenses these days have just trended lighter bodies. Like, for me, having a fullback is nice. We've seen it. Think about other teams. The Bears, they use a tight end as a fullback. The Chargers, they have those two guys, the 2 men in a truck, Scott Matlock, Tucker Fisk guys. Patrick Ricard in Baltimore. I like the fullback. I think there's definitely a use for it in this day and age where it's kind of like a spread to run type of vibe from an offensive perspective. So I don't see why not, for sure. Next question comes from Roger at Roger VK. If available, do you think the Vikings would try to trade for Joe Burrow? Absolutely, yes. The question would be why would Joe Burrow be available unless he just absolutely demands that he has to be traded? Because from a business standpoint, Cincinnati trading Joe Burrow, that would be, you want to have paper bags on tops of fans' heads. That's a really tough one. But yeah, it's just like in 2024, it's been reported that the Vikings checked in on Justin Herbert. And that's not, I believe Kwesi Adofo-Mensah kind of bristled at that when that was brought up maybe a couple years ago. But if one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL is an option, and you are a team that wants to compete like this team does every year, given ownership and how they operate, you're not going to not check in on that. Now, the cost and how much the Vikings could afford that with the roster elsewhere, again, that's secondary, because if you can get a player like that, you 100% would target it. But I also think, similar to how when Justin Jefferson makes a comment about how he's frustrated, you get people nationally who go on tangents of and you'll see it on First Take of ooh, could Justin Jefferson want out? And anybody here locally is no, he's just frustrated. He loves being here. I think people do the same with Joe Burrow and other players of that ilk. And so until there is a very clear reported Joe Burrow trade demand, it's all premature, incredibly premature in my opinion. Next question at MN Sports Fan, what's a bigger concern with McCarthy, his play or the fact he can't stay on the field? And do the injuries make it even more likely they'll add a significant quarterback this offseason? The availability is definitely the bigger concern. I've seen a lot of people say, Joe Burrow gets hurt, Justin Herbert gets hurt. Yes, but there's a very clear, J.J. McCarthy's stature, it was part of the reason you had people within the industry questioning whether he should be a first-round pick. And that, I want to make it very clear. There were a lot of people in the NFL, executives, scouts, coaches, who questioned the idea that J.J. McCarthy should be a first-round pick. It wasn't this no-brainer type of situation. There were a lot of reasons for that, and one of them was his stature. At the combine, I believe he weighed in at 220 pounds, but he was definitely, majorly, he had spent months trying to make sure that he weighed a certain amount. And so the stature, that's why the combine stuff, as silly as the underwear Olympics, as they call it, is, one of the values of some of that is there are benchmarks that certain players have to kind of rise to that historically make it more probable for them to play and stay in the NFL. And so with J.J. McCarthy, I mean, it's strength in the pocket. It's, his play style. He is, whether it's the competitor in him or just the inability to kind of remain calm within the fire, like his play style is, it's not Jackson Dart where that guy is like a Red Bull mountain biker jumping over a cliff. But J.J. McCarthy is always trying to make the extra play. And when you do that and you have defensive players with a level of explosiveness, physicality, and size that exists in the NFL and didn't exist in college or at IMG or at Nazareth Academy in Chicago, like the likelihood that an injury can happen increases. And so, like, I get the conversation of, well, it hasn't been a soft tissue thing, and he had an ankle injury and a concussion. Like, there's no doubt. And even this hand injury, like, maybe it's a little fluky, but you could tell, listening to Kevin O'Connell, both after the game and Tuesday, that he was worried that the scramble touchdown where J.J. McCarthy took the hit from Javon Holland, that could have led to a serious injury. And so, again, like, there's just a level of whether it's a lack of wherewithal and regard for the body kind of in the fire, like that kind of exists a little bit with JJ, and that can definitely be weeded out of someone, but he's just too inexperienced to be missing the amount of time that he's missed so far in his career. And I mean, it's hard not to look at the parallels of guys who through 2 years with teams that needed and expected to win have missed a lot of time. Like, those teams have, given serious thought and resources to other, and time and reps to other quarterbacks to ensure that their team is in the best spot. And so, to the last part of the question, like, yeah, I fully expect this offseason the Vikings to be very sharp, intentional, and aggressive about ensuring that their quarterback room gets to a certain, rises to a certain level. So that's how I'd answer that question. All right, the next one comes from Eric W. Can someone explain to me the JJ throws too hard narrative? Eric mentions all of the pass catchers that JJ McCarthy throws to at Michigan. Then he asked, but I'm supposed to believe they're too hard to catch for Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I mean, this one's interesting. The way I've kind of described it, first, let me just say, like, there have been too many drops from a receiving core that was expected to be perhaps the best in the NFL. So we'll just start there. Like, that is the baseline of it. But if you mean to tell me that J.J. McCarthy's velocity and the trajectory of his passes doesn't maybe contribute to some of the, like, the lack of timing consistency, I just, it's just hard for me to believe that all of a sudden these guys have lost their, anticipatory and strength at the catch point ability that they've all displayed for a long time. Here's how I would describe J.J. McCarthy as a thrower. Like, if I'm standing across from you within the room, okay, we're sitting in the living room and we both stand up and I've got my keys and I just toss them to you, but like in a straight line, it's going to be pretty hard to catch. You're going to have to adjust and catch it on a weird angle. Whereas if I put air like under my keys and loop them over to you, you have a better surface area of being able to catch the ball kind of like in the palm of your hand. And that's oftentimes how it feels watching J.J. McCarthy throw the football. In another analogy kind of form, like baseball pitchers, some of them, they throw their fastball with a trajectory that is almost a flat line, where it almost, from the hitter perspective, it almost views like, you almost perceive it like the ball is rising because the ball is traveling on such a straight line. And there are times where when J.J. McCarthy throws the football, like I kind of feel that way, where it's like, it's just such a flat plane that you almost have to like, it's a direct line to your hands. Again, this is not to make excuses for receivers who get paid a lot of money and were drafted very high to be able to make these types of catches. But if you just shoo it away, like part of me believes you're missing some of the dynamic of one of the aspects of J.J. McCarthy that the Vikings knew, even in evaluating him, needed to be improved from a touch perspective, from an art perspective, from a throttling the ball down perspective. I can tell you convincingly, I have had many conversations this year with people who work 2 floors above where I'm sitting right now about the touch and how, it has been, it's very, hit or miss with the way he kind of operates. And so, that's what I wanted to say. And then as far as the question, Eric, and you mentioned all the Michigan receivers, you go through the film of I'm painting with a very broad brush. And I kind of don't like this from my standpoint because I like specifics. I don't, I'm trying to be as objective as possible. But I, early this season, went back and watched a ton of Michigan film. There were a ton of, their accuracy misses. There were, amazing catches by Colston Loveland, who I think is a really, really good player and pass catcher. And so, and there were times where, you also have to look at the sample size of how often did he throw, what was the drop count. And I should probably do a lot of that stuff and bring it to you, and probably will as this season comes to a close. But the trajectory aspect of J.J. McCarthy as a thrower, you have to talk about. And again, folks listening to this on Spotify or Apple or watching on YouTube or listening on iHeart, there's no doubt in my mind that I will get this is your narrative, this is the narrative you're crafting, and I would just, I can't, shoo that away. It's going to be what it is, but I'm just trying to be as objective and clear-minded about it as possible. And it's the only way I kind of know how to go about the job, because then I don't feel at the end of the day like I'm leaving anything kind of on the bone. And hopefully for you guys, then it gives you the best perspective of, maybe why things have looked the way they've looked. Next question from James Williamson: is Flo leaving? He's talking about Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator. I mean, that would add just another crazy layer to just, all that's going to need to be sorted through this offseason. But, it's been reported that Brian Flores is in the final year of his deal as a defensive coordinator. In terms of what he's done, just an incredible job for multiple seasons now. This is 3rd year with the Vikings. Incredible job with calling plays and getting this unit to play with an identity. And even though this year they played a lot of games trailing, they haven't been amazing at all times stopping the run. Even on Sunday, they give up a few early runs. And if you really parse through the tape, what they did was they're like, fine, we're going to put 4 defensive linemen on the field, and you're going to have to run it against a 6-man front. And they had Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Jonathan Allen, and Jalen Redmond out there. And so, the ability to adapt in game, you cannot take all of that stuff for granted. But again, look, Brian Flores, we'll see what happens. Again, there's no question from what he's been able to do as a coordinator of this defense on the field that it's been he's done a great job. So we'll see what happens for sure. Let's see if there's anything else. We got a couple hockey questions in here, and I'll just say really looking forward to watching, Wild Preds after I do some Christmas shopping here on this Tuesday afternoon. Last one, we'll end here. Rock NHL, this may be too personal, but how long does your contract as the Vikings writer go for? Then he or she gives a compliment that I don't need to read out loud to make myself feel better. But, when you're a sports writer, sometimes you can have contracts. What I would say to that is I love being here. I love this fan base and this community and how much they care about their teams. It's something I've said many times. I didn't know when I moved up here that it was like this and that people were as invested as they are about their teams. And it's been one of the coolest aspects of this job. And even in a season like this, where it's long it's a long year. It makes it you guys make it fun. So I don't have any interest in anything other than following this thing to see where it goes. There's some side projects in the bigger picture work-wise and otherwise that I can't wait to get at. Got a lot of visions and dreams and priorities and stuff, so we'll get to that. But appreciate the question. I'm looking forward to when I can study the cornerback, safety, running back tape of this upcoming draft. I mean, we're like a few weeks from me hitting that huddle film and diving right in on a daily basis. So looking forward to that, and we will bring that stuff and my evaluations directly to you guys via the Alec Lewis Show. Thank you for being here. If you got all the way here, watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can rate and review, and we appreciate that stuff. The show is presented by First Resource Bank. It is sponsored by Unreal, the clothing brand that I am repping. I mean, I'm not wearing it right now. Why? Because all of it, after going to New York, is in my washing machine at my apartment over in the Northeast in the Minneapolis community. So, but Unreal, please go check them out. Locally owned and operated clothing brand that is as on their stuff with the times as it gets, and their information is in the description. Merry Christmas to all of you guys, and happy holidays. Again, like I've said many times, grateful for you guys paying attention to the Alec Lewis Show all season, and the stories at The Athletic, where there is one I'm very proud of for Wednesday, and much more to come in the weeks ahead. Again, Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Episode 137 is over, and we will talk to you very, very soon.